From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, welcome back. Dr. Jason here, Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We're on our Friday series of The Power of Change. I think this is part 4. Crazy, right? So I want to start with a number that used to run my life when I first got serious about business. And I checked this score constantly, or scores, I should say, production, collections, the bank balance. I'd refresh it like, a slot machine. And I would be like, every day I would be checking it up. It would be up, and then I felt like a king, and then it would be down, and I felt like a failure. And my whole mood was chained to the output, to the result, to the harvest, to use some of the language that we're going to spend using today. So it was miserable, and it didn't work. And I finally came to that realization. And you want to know when things actually turned around for me is when I stopped staring at the harvest and started obsessing with the inputs or the seeds that I was sowing. So no farmer on earth plants corn on Monday, stomps out to the field on Tuesday and screams, "Where the hell's my corn?" Right? We would call that person a lunatic. But that's exactly how most of us monitor and run our health, our marriages, our parenting, our money, our faith. We plant a little bit and we check for the fruit immediately. We want to harvest ASAP. We see nothing in the harvest because it didn't have time to grow. And then we quit or we pivot into a different strategy, and so on and so forth. So part 4 of The Power of Change has a name for the better way of doing it. Sowing, not reaping. And honestly, this is the one I could have written the title for myself, because I constantly love to use this analogy, because if you followed me for even a minute or two, you've heard me say it over and over and over again. Don't worry about the outputs. Control the inputs. So it's so important, and it completely changes your perspective on what you can control. So let's rewind the tape. Where are we? Let's stack it. So identity, who, not do. And then we talked about training, not trying. And then we talked about habits, not hope. So part 4 zooms out and asks the big question: how do you keep going when you're doing everything right and you still don't see the results? Because that's where most people quit. Not at the start, but in the middle, in the gap between sowing and reaping, between sowing and seeing the harvest, where you're doing the work, but the field still doesn't show anything. It's just all dirt. So here's the line for the whole section, right? You reap what you sow. You reap more than you sow. And you reap later than you sow. So stop watching and waiting for the harvest and get fanatical about the input. Get fanatical about the seed. Get fanatical about sowing. Groeschel builds this on farming, and it's perfect. So let me walk you through it. He opens with what he calls fanatical consistency. Not occasional, not when you feel like it, fanatical. The farmer doesn't plant when he's inspired. He plants every season, in season, rain or shine, because that's what farmers do. Fanatical consistency on the inputs is the entire ballgame. Yes, it's boring, but boring works, and I'll die on that hill. Then he makes you look up from today, and he pictures the person that you'll be in 10 years, right? He references a Matthew McConaughey story and all that. So who are you trying to become in 5 years, in 10 years? If you keep sowing exactly what you're sowing right now, Will you get there? It's a gut check for both directions. The seeds you're planting today, the workouts, the words that you say to your spouse, the dollars saved and invested, the conversations with God, they're not just about today. You're growing a 5 or 10 or 15-year version of yourself, whether you're really paying attention or not. And even if you haven't really thought about this, whatever seed you're sowing today, you're going to reap a harvest. It just comes down to, is it the harvest that you're hoping for? So let's get to the 3 laws of the harvest. And this is kind of the meat of the section for Pastor Craig. Like we've already said, you reap what you sow. You don't get to plant weeds, you plant. You don't get to plant weeds and harvest fruit. If you're planting junk food, junk habits, junk words, don't act shocked at the harvest. The field will reap honesty. You reap more than you sow. This is the most beautiful one. You plant one seed and you get a whole stalk. Small inputs, quality inputs, fanatically consistent inputs, compounded over time, return way more than you put in. You guys know this about investments, but it's for every facet of your life. That's the miracle of consistency. One tooth flossed, one page read, one honest conversation, one short workout. None of it looks like much going in, but with fanatical consistency, it will compound and you will reap an amazing harvest. And you reap later than you sow. This is the killer, right? So this is where people quit. There is always a gap, a lag between planting and the harvest. And that gap is exactly where you have to keep sowing. You have to be faithful before you see anything sprout. The people who win are the ones who keep planting even when they're unable to harvest anything. So the framework works. And then I want to just go over it with you to get tactical and granular because you know that's who I am. So let's get granular here. Number 1, I control my inputs and I completely release my outputs. In my business, I can't control whether a patient says yes to treatment. I can't control if the economy dips. I can't control what people in the community are saying about our business. Those are all outputs. But what can I control? The inputs, the seeds. Did I build the culture the right way? Do I have a case presentation system that maximizes opportunities for patients to say yes? Do I make the right follow-up calls and conversations? Do I put in the work? Do I do the reps? When I pour everything into the inputs and I let the harvest be the harvest, I've done everything that I can. It's the single most freeing shift I've ever made. Stop worrying about the outputs, and do everything you can to be fanatically consistent with maximizing the right inputs. That's the first thing. The second thing, I actually measure the sowing. I measure the inputs. I don't just measure the harvest. Most people only track outcomes, what their weight is, what their revenue is. But those are lagging numbers. The harvest is a lagging number. It's yesterday's harvest. I want you guys to track leading indicators, leading numbers, seeds. Did I put in the work for the training? Is this pre-contract offer exactly what it needs to be? Did I have that hard conversation with the assistant? Those are all things that are fully in your control. And when you put in the work, you'll reap the harvest that you want. Number 3, the 4 futures are a sowing engine, 15 minutes a day into mind, muscle, meaning, and money. 15 minutes for each of those quadrants is nothing. It feels like nothing going in, but you reap more than you sow, and you reap later than you sow. So 15 minutes a day times a decade doesn't just grow like a stalk, it grows a redwood. The magic isn't in the 15 minutes, It's in the 15 minutes, fanatically consistent, times 10,000 days. And underneath it all, we're either going to continue to win or we're going to learn something that will help us pivot. Some seasons, the harvest is thin no matter what you've planted. And that's not failure. That's learning. That's farming. You don't quit sowing because you had a disappointing harvest. You learn, you adjust, plant a different seed, plant it at a different time, plant it a different way, and then you plant again. So I had to get some of my electrolyte drink. So let me make this real and personal. When, how do I say this? I really really enjoy watching my boys, especially Jack, who's my 20-year-old, 21-year-old, chase football at the college level, right? Um, he has pursued things at a level that I never thought he would pursue them. And some of the great conversations that we've had with him is stop worrying about the harvest. Stop worrying about the wins. Stop worrying about the player of the week, player of the month, player of the year recognition. You cannot control that. What nobody sees is what I want him to focus on: the sowing, the 6 a.m. lifts, the two-a-days in the August heat, the visualization about what the perfect practice and game looks like, the turf work to get his speed up and to get his agility up, the seasons where he puts in all the work, still was not on the field, still rode the bench, and had nothing to show for it. If he only focused on his lack of playing time his freshman year, he would pivot or he would quit. He would try something else. But here's my confession, because I take the blame first. There were stretches where he was impatient and I had to coach him up to be, hey, continue with the fanatical consistency, continue to put in the work. And he did that. And even though the harvest took longer to bloom, it did. And he ended up being a starter. And he ended up winning Defensive Player of the Year. And now he's a captain going into his junior year. All because he was fanatically consistent with putting in the work when no one was looking and when the results weren't what he was hoping for. That situation with my son can relate to any situation in anyone's life. Losing weight, being a better leader, being more profitable at work, excuse me, having a more intimate relationship with your spouse, becoming best friends with your kids. Like, those are the harvests, right? What are you willing to do to sow? What are you going to be fanatically consistent about? Come up with something for yourself. Pick one of the four futures, pick something within one of the quadrants, and say to yourself, this is who I'm trying to become. And then ask yourself, if I want to be fanatically consistent about becoming this person, what do I need to do on a regular basis that's going to allow me to become this person, this best version of myself? Is it meal prep? Is it consistent workouts? Is it not shying away from uncomfortable conversations? Is it more CE? Is it communication classes? Whatever it is, decide who you're trying to become, reverse engineer it to the seeds that you need to sow, and then get after it. So that's all I got for today. You know what? Actually, let me just tie in a quick spiritual uh, component here. I know some of you guys are not into this, and maybe you're turning me off here, but just a quick faith layer. So 30 seconds, no preaching. It's not my thing, to be quite honest with you. The sowing and reaping language it's straight out of scripture. Paul writes it plainly: a man reaps what he sows. And then he adds the encouragement that carries me in the lag season. He says, paraphrasing here because I can't quote scripture, let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. At the proper time. Not at your time, the proper time. God's time, or whatever you believe in. That's the faith of a farmer. You sow in trust in a field that looks like dirt, believing there's a God who runs the harvest, even when you can't see a single sprout. You do your part. You put in the work. You supply the inputs, the sowing. And then you let go. And then God will do his part. And he will afford you that harvest in his time. Don't grow weary. Don't grow weary. Don't give up before the harvest. So let's wrap it up. Part 4, sowing, not reaping. You don't control the harvest. You never did. You control the seeds of fanatical consistency and the faith to keep planting, even in that gap, even in that lag between sowing and reaping. You reap what you sow. You reap more than you sow. And you reap later than you sow. So get fanatically consistent about the sowing and let the harvest come at the proper time. So let's give you guys some homework. Pick your seeds. What are you going to double down on? What are you going to be fanatically consistent about? Start doing the work. Stop checking for outputs. Don't sow in the morning and try to reap in the afternoon. It doesn't happen. That's the first part of the homework. Next part is read the next section. God's power, not willpower. Because next Friday, we're going to break that down pretty seriously. Next week is the capstone, and it's the piece that self-help books leave out. After all the identity, after all the training, after all the habits, after all the sowing, we're going to talk about the power that actually makes lasting change possible. And spoiler alert, it was never willpower. Willpower gets you to a certain point, and God's power gets you over the finish line. So reach out if you have any questions or concerns. As you guys know, my contact information is on the website. Let me know if this material is resonating with you, and if you're struggling to come up with inputs, reach out. I've struggled with tons of inputs, and I've picked some good ones, I've picked some bad ones, and I've either won or I've learned. So either way, I win. Love you guys.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.